Warpugs, every once in a while, I need to hear a story about something that makes me not want to sleep for the next 4 to 6 years if I ever found out that it existed in real life. Guys, this is from Roanoke Gaming, who has brought us so many other things before in the past, but this time I think he's gone too far because he has done something called the RIBCAGE splitting Twitcher Necromorph mutation. That's a mouthful and a half. And just based off the thumbnail art, it is a 10-pound a nope and a 5-pound bag scenario. Warpugs, this was requested by Makuta Stratex in the Discord, and to be honest with you, I am never playing whatever this is from. It is a lifestyle choice. I just prefer just no, and never, and how about not at all. And what we're going to do is we're going to get into this, and I'm going to express my amounts of nope as the thing goes by, because this looks like Batman got hit with specific flesh-growing viruses and then decided just for kicks he was going to mind meld and interview a fusion with a boomer from Left 4 Dead. This is a bunch of no, guys. This is a whole bunch of no, but let's get into it. Roanoke Gaming's links are going to be in the description down below. One of the series I recommend from Roanoke Gaming is his Space Marine series, about the implants and organs of a Space Marine. I really recommend that. He really goes into detail about that, and it's one of my... I highly recommend that video from this channel if you want a good introduction to Roanoke Gaming and the way he does things. Without anything else to say, let's get into it. All links in the description down below. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe. Shutting up, moving on, let's go. It's time for the Crimson Cringe.
With the stars all but virtually secured for humanity, it made it even easier for us by there really being nothing out there competing for the same resources.
Yay! After
humanity created faster than light travel, and with our populations growing ever larger, requiring more and more energy and materials, the galactic influence of the Homo sapiens species would spread unchecked by any and all resistance.
Is this... what?
Which is how it's meant to be anyways, yeehaw!
Yeah.
But what some found disturbing while others didn't really care is just how quiet the actual Milky Way galaxy is.
There is a theory about this called the, Dark Forest, and it's one of the most unsettling theories that I can probably tell you guys about. The Dark Forest is a theory about why we haven't really heard anything coming from outside, why we haven't made contact or even heard anything from other civilization. And it's actually kind of terrifying when you think about it. If he doesn't go into it, I might explain it later. Let's see.
The phrase was coined saying the stars are ours because truly they were. Nothing was out there to make contact with. There were no other species just starting out trying to make their own like orbits and get resources or really do anything. It was just us alone in dead space.
He said it! He said it!
But for a lot of humanity, this was a blessing, not a curse. After all, at least we had each other, and at the rate our species was growing, it was likely very clear to everyone at this point that we would eventually also have to jump galaxies as well if we intended on continuing the growth of our populations. But in order to do that, a lot of sectors of society would need to be brought up to a level that is almost unimaginable to us currently as we sit here as a one-planet species. Maybe we'll get to Mars sometime soon, who knows, as long as we don't nuke ourselves into oblivion like a bunch of idiots. Anyhow, crushing...
we are a bunch of idiots. We're doomed.
Existential threat aside that we might game into ourselves before even properly getting off this world, in one way, EarthGov would begin securing areas of the galaxy and eventually even denying private companies certain systems. Of course, if you are, in fact, denying fanatical zealots areas where their presumed religious artifacts are, sometimes they'll just kind of go for it anyhow and not really care about the consequences of unearthing a body-altering eldritch horror on themselves because, you know, it'll get into the afterlife. I mean, if you really stop and think about it, to believe in unitology and deny what you are seeing, you got to be drinking the Kool-Aid hardcore, so you're not really, following any laws set down, and drinking the Kool-Aid they in fact were. As the Ishimura jumped into a system to planet crack Aegis 7, a known off-limits planet in an illegal system, the threat of being caught was actually relatively low. Because the system was forbidden, nobody really came out that way anyways, and space is rather large, so it's not like regular patrols were being conducted there. What likely started as just an illegal mining operation would take on a rather abrupt turn as the marker was uncovered, which would induce insanity in those who were even remotely near it.
Yay!
As the situation went from bad to worse down on the colony, some would attempt to make an escape, while the brass in the Ishimura would say, hey, you see that stone thing there? That no way, shape, or form looks like demonic horns or anything? We should probably bring that up here despite it was, discovered and everyone started going insane. I'm sure those two things are not related.
Not at all. You see, this is what happens when you don't use immersive gameplay and stuff. You see, if they had 40K in this universe and they just let it be, and just as an example, like everybody was like tabletopping or playing some sort of thing, they would have taken one look at that thing and said, that looks kind of Slaneshi, and I don't want anything to do with that. And they would have left it alone. And then everything would have been fine. Everything would have been fine. But this is what happens when you do not have immersive storytelling.
But related they were, and this would serve to create quite a problem for everyone involved in the Ishimura as well. Once being brought on the ship, this would create a cascade of consequences for everyone involved. So in today's episode, we are specifically going to discuss the lore morphology of the Twitcher Necromorph. This specific variant has undergone many structural changes due to the presence of the military suit and the advancements of technology.
Oh, hell no. No, 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 hell no, God no.
Contained within. So let's cover that because basically exploding rib cages.
Bruh, why does the meth head have knife hands? Okay? Why does the meth head have knife hands? That is pure crackhead energy right there.
With the order given to bring up the marker along with a few of the colonists who were exhibiting symptoms of insanity brought on by the marker, and with my voice cracking because I feel like absolute crap, it would be contained within the cargo hold, which would do very little to shield anyone on the ship from its effects. As the ship also descended into chaos, the flight deck would be attacked and overwhelmed, rapidly eliminating most of the
What the hell was that thing? Do I even want to know?
top personnel and people who could actually pilot the Ishimura.
No.
Eventually, it became purely about survival in a contained area, trapped like a rat in a chia pet sort of scenario. Eventually, these sole survivors would ultimately begin succumbing themselves as a distress signal was sent out. Isaac and the rest of the team would then fly in to help repair the Ishimura, not knowing what was actually happening on the ship, and upon crash landing and losing their own vessel, they would be forced to attempt to survive within, much like many others were attempting to do at that exact moment as well. After losing one of their crewmates to the first attack by a slasher, this would begin to immensely affect Hammond, as his weakness would be the memory of his longtime crewmate, Chen. Chen was the man first taken out by the slasher, which would kickstart the ultimate fate of an entire military ship. For reasons not truly known, despite all the other slashers and conglomerations of bone and flesh on the Ishimura, Hammond would consistently run into Chen as if he was being stalked by him, which is interesting as it brings up an idea actually. While not explicitly seen overall, could it be possible that while Necromorph intelligence seems to stem from the marker, could former memories cause a Necromorph to actually track down those they once knew? To understand that, we have to understand the Brother and Moon's generalized plan. On a small scale, well, comparatively to them anyways, what they would deem likely as micro-interactions inducing psychological damage is likely more preferable than, just slicing and damaging everybody. So by causing someone with close relationships to turn on specifically others that they knew, this would seem to impose more of this damage, thus making them less resilient and susceptible to the marker signal as a whole.
It's chaos. Like I said, they need 40K. They needed 40K, they wouldn't have done this.
Leading to the downfall of them as well as potentially even the rest of the group. Broken morale causing people to behave less effectively. It would seem to show that Chen would be the perfect candidate for going after the leader of the group, Hammond, thus rendering him less effective and breaking the team further.
Right.
It's always interesting to see the interpersonal aspect of the marker and the effects that it has in creating necromorphs, because I'll still come across ideas that seem to be supported by context clues, whether it was meant to be that way or not. It really just shows even further how the marker may choose to affect people differently depending on their situations. Anyhow, as Chen would track down Hammond to the captain's nest, Hammond would be forced to trap him in an escape pod. Upon Isaac showing up, Hammond would show trepidation towards jettisoning the crewmate and apparent friend, but that wasn't Chen anymore anyhow. By seemingly doing the right thing and blasting his friend out in an escape pod, he would appear to be definitely justified in doing this, but ultimately this would result in the doom of an entire military cruiser. As the events of the Ishimura continued to unfold, as the engines were refueled, reignited, and the comm systems were repaired, which is why they were even there in the first place, Just prior to this, Kendra would notice that a military cruiser had just shock jumped in and was keeping its distance. They attempted to call out again, but the comms were messed up. Once those were fixed, and then removing the Leviathan from the outside because it was blocking the antenna,
okay. Why does this thing have 4 mouths? And why does it have little hands? Why are these there? If somebody can explain that to me in 3 words or less, I would be much appreciative. Otherwise, if it's longer than 3 words, just burn it with fire.
They would then call out to the cruiser where they would get information that the vessel was looping to the Ishimura. The message stated that they had picked up the escape pod and were waiting for a response from the crew on the Ishimura. Panicking, Kendra would immediately call out to them, where it became clear that an outbreak on the military ship was already in full swing.
Yay.
With the Valor having gone brain dead, essentially all the pilots and officers were now just meat on the walls. The Valor would then crash into the Ishimura, spearing the ship and just becoming stuck. Realizing that there was a shock point drive on the Valor, which they needed to get off the Ishimura, Isaac would then attempt to retrieve it. Upon entering the ship, though, it became rapidly apparent the Valor wasn't just out there for funsies. Finding a room with nukes loaded up and ready to go, it would look like the Valor was there on a seek and destroy mission, which tracks really because, as we all know, EarthGov had initially built the red marker centuries earlier and tested it out before ultimately hiding it on Aegis 7 because really it was just a monumental failure. The Valor was there to
A monumental failure. This is a biological weapon of the highest order.
either take out everyone on the Ishimura, or there was kind of like this thing, like maybe they're just there to take out the marker. Though it's a little hazy on which is which. Personally, I think they're going to take out everyone, as it seems like that's what they were really going to do. But then again, why did they pick up the escape pod, and why didn't they just blow the ship as soon as they got there? I don't know, it's kind of hard to figure out what their actual game plan was. Anyhow, moving deeper into the ship, Isaac would ultimately come across the escape pod, highlighting the actual power that a slasher has. Multiple soldiers who were near the pod when it opened were torn apart. Their armor that was rated for military interactions and presumably concussive force detonations, along with direct hits from pulse rifles, was cut apart like tissue paper.
Bro, you're holding your leg, okay?
What's worse is, because they had crashed directly into the Ishimura, they were now all under the influence of the marker pre- and post-mortem. As soldiers would start to drop left, right, and center, it's very—
What the hell is even— Bruh, no. No, that's the Mothman. That's the Mothman, and a meth head had a baby and peed on it.
likely that they were doing what they were trained to do and go for center mass, which, as we all know, goes over like a wet fart in church, as they would continue to drop, not understanding that they actually had to dismember them and just stop them from moving if they wanted to put them down for good, or at least long enough to survive. Those that were still somewhat intact after dropping—
Look, it's the Mothman.
Would quickly enter the transformation—
Bruh, why? That is just— that is unsanitary.
stage, where they would begin exhibiting different
that is
physiological
unsanitary.
structures from their other slasher counterparts for a variety of reasons, and I believe it has to do with the suits specifically. Along with this, as the name implies, them being a twitcher, their spasmodic movements and unpredictable behavior would strike fear into those that saw these things for the first time, especially me. Playing this game for the first time ever, way back in the day, I was like, my god. Anyways, but before getting to the movement aspect, let's first take a look at their morphology, which will give us an idea of how deeply the stasis units of their suits have affected them. I'll tell you, it's good to be back. Starting with the feet, we see they have grown actually quite large width-wise, and much like the rest of their body—
Don't y'all even. Don't y'all even. I know at least one of you. I know at least one of you.
bodies, it appears that muscular growth, and along with that connective tissue growth, such as tendons and ligaments, have increased in size. This is likely for one of the main reasons, which we will cover later.
Okay.
The tarsal bones have been forced apart by the growth of the tissues in between the bones, splitting the skin, with the big toe and index toe, where they would normally connect, basically being very wide apart. This has created a paddle-like appendage on their feet, and along with this, they possess the protrusion that comes out of the back of the foot, specifically the heel, that most slashers have, giving them the appearance of walking on hands rather than just feet, which is— it's like always been kind of interesting to me. One of the things that the marker has is its ability just to screw with natural structures, but still maintain almost a hint of what already exists in nature. Humans are the only primates with actual foot structures that we have. Most other primates have essentially hands that they walk on, concerning their feet, as they have a high amount of dexterity in their feet. Humans have, like our feet, are designed to cover vast distances by taking each step and placing that potential energy specifically into the Achilles tendon. The foot itself is not as controllable, but serves simply as a platform rather than a grasping appendage, because we weren't like, hanging out and swinging in trees and all that stuff.
Right.
In the slashers, whether standard or twitcher, the foot will grow an extra appendage, or perhaps the big toe swings around to create a more hand-like appendage like in other primates, perhaps utilizing long dormant genes in humanity from a more primitive time. These traits will be brought back to the surface by influence of the marker specifically. Moving up the leg, we continue to see that the Twitchers were much more than just your standard civilian. In fact, they were absolute swole goals, which, given all the training soldiers typically must endure and complete while on active duty, and the general amount of pure testosterone existing in an enclosed environment, this really isn't too much of a stretch. Very likely, most soldiers who exist on the ship would be highly trained physically, as it comes with the job, and I don't know, much like how I just enjoy weightlifting for no reason other than I just enjoy weightlifting, it kind of seems like maybe a lot of soldiers enjoy the same thing. But this extra muscle mass makes them thicker in the legs, and overall, as they would have worked out, that gives them a general, more imposing, I guess, outline. So I do not think that there is much gene manipulation here on the part of like EarthGov to create larger soldiers than normal.
Nah, they just did a lot of walking calves hard as rocks, y'all.
And this is really just the marker continuing to influence what was already naturally there. The size of the soldiers are something that just appears to be naturally obtainable with any workout regimen, but regardless, this has equated to them being larger than your standard slasher. As we move up to the legs, they have stayed in their standard plantigrade structuring, but because of the feet being altered with them now walking on their toes, like many other slashers, this has made them kind of slightly ungainly when they're walking towards you. The armoring on their legs is almost shredded, with visible muscle being exposed in some areas. This would appear to be possibly due to either damage that they have incurred, or perhaps the speed at which they move, coupled with possible muscular growth. It has worn away the skin in a
I really hate this clip.
Matter of moments. If we look at how the Twitcher moves, the
This is pure crackhead energy coming off this thing.
legs, specifically near the groin and inner thighs, will make contact. That friction from how quickly they move has worn away the armor almost immediately, as well as the skin, due to the heat likely generated from them just walking around the ship. We can see the skin appears just fine on the other side of the quadriceps, indicating that this appears to be a friction issue. As we move to the abdomen and thoracic region, we begin to see muscular growth I mentioned moments ago. While the person was likely larger than your standard civilian anyhow, through things like weightlifting and increased rations, along with Lord knows what else they have in the future, I don't know, Trinbologna sandwiches or something, we see this area is larger than normal, as it highlights what may be going on within the body itself after exposure to the marker signal. The massive growth of tissue not seen in other slashers has been spreading across the side of the body, away from the stasis module left over in their suit. The body has actually incorporated the stasis module, and it could be that the energy it uses is being disseminated through spreading this tissue. This results in some interesting damage to the body that we can see. As we look at the chest region, specifically the left pectoral, this tissue spreads out and seems to have spread in an outward force more so than just passively growing. We can assume the internal growth of tissue as well, which may even be tentacles of sorts.
It didn't need tentacles. It doesn't need tentacles. I don't want to know that this thing and the way it moves has tentacles. That is the last thing I need. I've seen enough anime to know where tentacles are going.
Has blasted out the left portion of the rib cage. This has blasted out both sides of the rib cage, but it should be known that when you look at the ribs themselves, you can actually see evidence that there is still like some ribs that are intact to the sternum, but some of them, as in like the lower ribs, appear to have been winged out from this force. This is also likely what happened by the back muscle contracting so forcefully that it actually pulled the ribs away from the sternum. This has given the Twitcher a wing-like appearance, almost like kind of like a blood eagle, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And presumably the chest now holds onto its structuring by growth of these tentacle-like tissues.
So if you don't know what he means by blood eagle was a Viking punishment. And I'm not going to go into the details, but it was horrifyingly bad. It was a very brutal form of execution.
Moving up to the shoulders, the air snap now to form the overhead appearance some slashers will gain when the blades are coming out specifically from their palms. Moving around to the back of this creature, we see it has developed a hunch of sorts due to the buildup of muscle tissue, but also because as the ribcage was ripped apart, this allowed for like the latissimus dorsi and trapezius muscles to bunch up rather than being in their normal relaxed semi-stretched out positioning. It's sort of like when you snap your hamstring or something, like away from one side or the other, it'll like kind of bunch up near your knee or near your butt cheek. Those are like the two options. Basically, it's doing that. And this in turn has pushed the head forward, and the creature's neck is much thicker than a standard variant of slasher as well.
Dude, look, military has dental, my guy. Military has dental. Also, dude, your left arm is bigger than your right arm. That means you're lefty, and you need to stop.
These all hint at the potential that they were larger anyhow concerning musculature, but after they fell, natural attributes were increased by the marker, which in this case would be gains. We'll get to the head in a moment, but as we move down to the arms, we see two differences. First, the right arm is very obviously elongated. The forearm of this creature is very clearly doubled in size, stretching the skin to its maximum length, indicating that the growth post-mortem is actually present. The armor has also been torn and moving down the hands. You might be wondering, well, how is that possible? The long bones epiphyseal plates were very likely reactivated, which allowed for the long bones to continue growing once again, with things like the osteoclast kind of coming in to break down bones so that it was able to easily spread, and the osteoblast coming in to reform new bone. But the armor has also been torn, and moving down to the hands, the blades have exited out in their standard form. On the left arm, we see it's a little more mangled, possibly due to the growth of tissue in the thoracic cavity, but the
This is just uncomfortable to witness, okay? This is just uncomfortable to witness. No.
bicep and tricep do appear more damaged, but the wing on the back side of it is going to be just like on the right side, pretty much the same. On the left arm, it's a little more mangled due to the thoracic damage. The bicep and tricep have fused somewhat with the rib cage, almost creating a wing-like look. The forearm is elongated, and coming out of the wrist is the bone. The hands still have all 4 fingers and 1 thumb coming out, and the palm is another blade. Moving to the head of the Twitcher, we see something rather interesting. First, their helmets are still on the top of their head, but the top portion, like the most top portion, has been explosively lost, and inside, tendrils can be seen exiting out of the top of the skull. And this is sort of what I base my entire thinking on concerning how the stasis module affected those that were infected. In their normal life, the stasis module appears to be there for several reasons. First, obviously, it would be invaluable in times of conflict. Whether they are able to use it like Isaac can to slow down enemies, or just use it in their own suits to prevent a fast bleed out, manipulating the speed at which things unfold would be quite handy. When changed, however, the stasis module seems to reverse. This would seem to imply that it's damaged somehow after it is exposed to the marker signal. In this way, this is why I believe the
oh my god, what the... Please stop with the crackhead energy.
Explosive force is so prevalent in the Twitchers. As the stasis module sped up tissue growth, the tendrils that are seen, that are usually reserved for like later stage slashers or even bigger creatures that exist, rapidly grows and expands in seconds rather than hours. As it grows, this provides enough force to literally crack the rib cage outwards on the sides when it runs into the ribs. As for the top of the head, as we all know, the tendrils will continue growing to other portions of the body, which it literally runs into the top of the skull, blasting it off due to the sheer pressure. Along with that, it literally breaks through the helmet as well. This effect seems to be completely standard.
How much pressure we're talking about here? Because that looks like some sort of... that's an armored helmet, and it just...
As any soldier turn will show a similar injury that can be observed by the inward presence forcing its way out. Along with this, the rapid growth again would have caused muscle to contract and seize, helping to pull the ribcage further away once it was broken from the sternum. The Twitcher's face is pretty much the stuff of nightmares. While the top portion is still covered by the helmet, the mouth is large and the teeth have shown signs that they are growing and have become sharper as well. The mandible is still intact though, which is interesting as this suggests bone growth, at least in the head, is minimal if present at all, and usually the mandible will crack if subjected to more growth. What's fairly alarming is how ill-prepared soldiers were to deal with a single slasher. Although, to be honest with you, I think we should probably take into consideration that after crashing into the Ishimura, they would also be subjected to the marker signal as well, and for all soldiers that were not as intelligent as other soldiers on the ship, they would suffer the same fate as another human, except this time they were fully armed and had armor of their own that other soldiers would have difficulty contending with, which would obviously create infighting and people taking out people. Now, when dealing with a Twitcher, it is a highly difficult experience. First, they are moving much faster than your standard slasher. Their reaction time is actually faster than a normal human's, as the constant inflowing stasis is causing them to live in a space-time at a different rate. As a result, when you encounter a normie, so to speak, you look like you're moving at like an incredibly slow rate. Like, you aren't even trying. Because of this, it makes their movements appear as though they're unpredictable, but really your brain just doesn't know how to interpret movement as it's happening too fast, and so it seems unpredictable. When firing at a Twitcher, it will also like just seemingly dodge. Obviously, these slashers in some capacity will try to block incoming hits, indicating that they are reacting to you, which again involves a level of intelligence being maintained regardless of how disfigured they are. The Twitchers are no different. Instead of blocking, they can actually see your shot coming. In IRL, they'd be able to see a person, pulling a trigger, so they just simply step out of the way. However, this is not a perfect arrangement. Twitchers are not godlike, and the stasis only gives them a few seconds per second of recognition. What a statement that was. So they cannot block everything. The main goal is to just go for their stasis unit. Upon damaging it directly or causing enough damage to the suit in general, the stasis is no longer disseminated to the rest of the suit and the body, and instead will self-destruct, causing the Twitcher to enter a state of an extreme slowdown, now exposed to the standard effects of stasis and how it was originally designed. However, once this wears off, the slasher will once again be up and moving around at a similar speed. This implies that even though the unit is damaged, it is still able to somewhat function to keep the Twitcher moving faster than normal. I also want to bring up how it may be possible this is how the unit was actually supposed to be used.
Dude, no, it's too much, man.
And that's what its design was really for. Not only could the stasis unit kind of slow down blood loss during grievous wounds, or maybe even facilitate rapid healing, it may be that it can speed up a soldier as well by manipulating the space-time around them, making soldiers in general more difficult to overcome, allowing them to seemingly run faster, react quicker, and survive things that would easily take a soldier out in today's time.
Makes sense.
Taking out a Twitcher, once critically affected by its own stasis field, is pretty standard from here. However, it should be known that just like with some slashers who play dead and wait for those to come by so they can attack, Twitchers will do the same thing. Taking off their legs, they will wait for unsuspecting engineers or other soldiers to approach them, and then once again will attack. Because just remember, they can lose their legs and they're totally fine. If you lose your legs, you're probably going to bleed out. The speed at which they can move can also account for the force that they are able to exert. As we all know, force is mass times acceleration. The Twitcher possesses an insane amount of acceleration, and the blades it possesses are also solid bone, which are able to dismember your standard person anyhow. Because of this, if you get too close, and because of the stasis module literally affecting the physics of the universe, it can instantly swipe at you. At first, this may result in just your arm falling off, which, just casually losing your arm, depending on
casually losing your arm. I've never really heard that one before.
Where the hit actually lands. But in some cases, they swipe so fast that your body doesn't even register what happened yet. Slicing at Isaac's midsection, all his organs, his spinal cord, vertebrae, muscle, and skin will be severed. Taking a few steps forward, the spinal cord is able to communicate still, as some of the nerves have not been completely obliterated and are still being held together by attractive forces. However, as he moves forward, this will jostle them enough and separate the entire connection, which in turn causes him to fall in half, while his lower body still takes a few more steps, as that was the last signal it received before finally falling over. Although, usually just results in Isaac instantly falling apart, like many of the soldiers prior to him. Of course, that's not how it goes around here, partner.
Okay.
Again, by taking out the stasis, you can quickly dismember the Twitcher before it even gets a chance to do that to you and then stare at the camera. By removing the limbs, you can incapacitate it, but interestingly, after doing so, it will remain on the ground and jabber for a few more moments before it finally stops. This may be because the stasis slows the damage it incurs, or at least the actual knowledge that it does, and when this happens, the jabbers are actually at yelling several times, but it's sped up. So it seems like a few seconds for you, it's actually potentially a few minutes for that Twitcher sitting there screaming. What fun!
No, not fun. Horrifying. Bad. Terrible.
But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, then leaving a like would be awesome of you, and subscribing is a great way to stay up to date on when I post. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales, and merch links in the description. And speaking of patrons, though, I'd like to thank mine real quick. First, huge thank you to our astrophysicist, Death's Dare.
Or bugs. Look, the slashers were bad enough. I did not need to know about the crackheads of the Dead Space universe, okay? Look, I don't trust crackheads. I don't trust meth heads. No. Twitcher. Tweaker. Related? You decide. Guys, what in the hell? No. No, 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 okay? Just hell no. I'm not playing that game. I don't want those things to come after me. I don't want to see a flash in my window and sit there and think some meth head that's grown hooks for hands is coming after me. I don't need that in my life, okay? And I definitely didn't need the Mothman. The Mothman after he, relapsed out of rehab. I just don't need it, okay? No. Hell no. Well, why you guys keep on trying to get me to do things I don't want to do? God almighty. Just why? Just why? Warpugs, Roanoke Gaming. One thing I like is he really goes into depth on what this would do. If he did this for this, imagine what he did for the Space Marines, okay? So that's the reason I said check out a Space Marine video, because I'm a 40k nerd and that's generally what it boils down to. But this is just, I did not need to know about the meth heads of the Dead Space universe. It's just something I didn't need in my life, and now that I have it, I wish I could give it back with a refund. I'd even get it with chicken tendies. But all things being considered, if I do see one of these in the woods, I'm dead anyway. And I now have a new appreciation for how the Mothman is clean out here in West Virginia. I'll just say that. He, not whatever that thing was that was flying around vomiting on people and shoving tendrils in their face. I'm not oppressed. I don't want to be chased down by no. I don't need the Flash with hook hands. It's just not something that I require in my life. Warpugs, all of Roanoke Gaming's links are going to be in the description down below. I highly recommend this channel. I highly recommend this channel. I'm going to take off from here. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Subscribe to me if you haven't already. Check my links in the description below for early access via the memberships or Patreon. And check the merch store as well. I am going to be recording. I have decided to record the Calidus video this weekend. I will be editing it all weekend. And hopefully I'll have something up for you guys come Monday for Patreons and members. And I don't know if I'm going to release on Thursday or Friday. I haven't decided yet, but we'll find out. I'll catch you guys next time. No.